Hey everybody, my name is Lia Grainger and I'm the host of Curtain Call, which is what you're watching right now. Every Wednesday at noon, FabCollab presents Curtain Call, hello, which is a weekly interview series with different women in the arts industry, musicians, arts presenters, and we're here every week at noon. And today, I'm just going to invite her to join right now. Hello. Today we have Mercedes Caxaj from Sunfest, and now just announced last week from Small World Music in Toronto. Hello. Hi, Mercedes.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I was just introducing you. Yeah, Mercedes has been at Sunfest in London, Ontario, this incredible world music festival and one of the pillars of world music in Canada for the last 12 years. And she's a huge advocate for culture in Canada and a musical curator, many things. Yeah, and we're so happy to have you here right now, just because you've suddenly announced this new position that you have taken
Yeah,
on at Small World Music, which is another pillar of world music in Canada, in Toronto. So we're so happy to have you here. Welcome.
thanks for inviting me. Yeah, no, this is great. Happy to be here.
So where are you right now?
I'm in London. I'm in London right now. Yeah, so that
Are you
transition
out,
hasn't
are
happened
you
yet.
outdoors?
No, I'm in my house.
Okay, it looks like a sort of like patio setup. So I
Yeah,
wasn't sure.
there's a nice little like feature wall over here.
Yeah, so we were really excited to have you here to hear sort of about how you came into the role that you're in now and sort of the career that you've had. But then also, musicians are obviously going through a crazy time right now. The arts presentation industry is sort of in a time of upheaval and change, and sort of a lot
Mhm.
of things are shifting. Will they go back? So it's great to have you here so we can talk about some of those things, because I think a lot of artists are really wondering like where they go from here and how to sort of still be connecting with people like you and connecting with their audiences.
Mhm.
But maybe just to start, you could tell me a little bit just about yourself and how you ended up in this career path.
Yeah, well, I started because, well, it was just kind of in my family, to be honest with you. My
Yeah.
father's a musician. My mom is not a trained musician, but she's a singer and she is a huge music lover. So, my brother and I grew up in a very musical household. I'm also a studied musician. I play the piano. I don't perform or anything like that, but yeah. So that has always been something in our lifeblood. Essentially, is music and going to see live music and supporting artists and buying music and everything like that. Actually, our collections are quite extensive. And then, of course, in terms of Sunfest, well, that came in because my father was the one who founded it. So I started working with him way
So did
back.
you kind of grow up with the festival, like
I
going to the
did.
festival?
Yeah, I grew up with it. I don't remember how old I was. I think I was maybe 8 or 9, maybe 8, 7 or 8 when I was the first edition, and helping stuff envelopes or something like that,
Yeah.
going around with a cardboard box asking for donations. And of course, I've never missed an edition. I've always contributed to it, always volunteered my time to it. And it was about 10 years ago or so where I started really programming artists, attending conferences, being part of the industry. To be completely honest, it wasn't something that I thought that was going to be my career. I always thought it was going to
Mhm.
be something on the side. I actually am a French teacher, and I am
Okay.
also a marketer as well. So I have degrees in both. But I always brought in my knowledge to the festival, helping expand it further, helping with its marketing capabilities, etc. But then always just wanting to get into the process as well. And then
Do you think
eventually
you
I just,
ever resisted it, like just because it was bad? Because I'm also a writer and my mother's a writer, and I feel like I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And it took a while to be like, no, I will. Like, I love it also, and I
Yeah,
want to.
I think it wasn't so much like a rebel against what my dad did. I think it was more so like, you see the industry, and I'm sure you as a woman, in the industry, it can be really tough. And so if you add on top of that, sort of like an element that people think you're just doing the job because your dad's doing, like there's nepotism, people accuse you of
Sure.
that, as opposed to what your talent is and what you bring to the table, right? And so I like our festival is so successful. It's been going on for almost 27 years now. This will be its 27th edition. And that's largely in due to my family's contribution. My contribution when the festival itself happens, my mom and my brother's contribution to it. And of course, our family of volunteers and committee members that we couldn't do it without them. So that I guess that kind of, as a woman as well, you have that like imposter syndrome sometimes of like, oh, maybe it's just like I'm not good enough to go into this industry or something like that. And
Yeah,
those are things
totally.
that we have to fight against, especially as women. And I do that not only within the music industry, I do that on my political advocacy side as well. Like I'm part of, I'm part of a women in politics board here in London to encourage women to get into politics. So these are spaces, the music industry, the political arena, where I find that women sometimes struggle a lot to get into for so many different reasons. And for me, it was, not only being a woman of color, but also the daughter of somebody who's already established. And so it was kind of that, okay, well, am I good enough to do this? Or is it just because my dad's part of it? But then eventually it was like, no, actually, I do a lot of work. I work my ass off and I
How
do,
did you like get to that place where you were like, how did you convince yourself? How did you get over it and like the sort of imposter syndrome?
That's a great question. I think it was probably about 3 years ago where I was doing corporate marketing and I was doing Sunfest on the side. I mean, it was like having
Yeah.
two full-time jobs. And eventually I just kind of reached that point where it was like, this is too much and I need to pick like which way I'm going to go. And screw it. I'm gonna go nonprofit. I'm gonna go this side. I'm gonna go to the arts, and I'm gonna see how it goes there because it's kind of terrifying when you have this full-time job, let's say, that gives you a certain amount of money every month, to live and do your expenses, and know that that's going to be severely cut. And so it was a big risk on my end to do that, and I don't regret it for any moment
Yeah,
whatsoever,
I mean,
as
it
it brought me so much more fulfillment personally and of course
Mhm.
professionally, to do that. And it was the best choice I could have done. And I think I always knew even before that time that this was where I was heading. But in the end, you have to be sure about what you're doing. And I was succeeding in both ends. I was going to go forward in my marketing career, and I was
Mhm.
getting a lot more jobs and opportunities there, but in the end it wasn't bringing me joy. So I think women need to, anybody in general, but especially women, you need to understand what brings you joy, and you need to go for it and just do it. And if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to what it was you were doing.
Sure. Nothing is permanent.
Yeah,
So can
exactly.
you talk a little bit about like how you sort of developed like your eye and your ear as a curator? Because I know a huge part of your job is going to these conferences, trying to find new artists. And so how did you sort of figure out what you liked and what your taste was?
As I said, I grew up in a very musical household, and I'm also trained and studied as well. And so through that, I guess if you could say that I developed the more technical aspect about it. But I think when it comes to programming, I think it really is about like your taste and a feeling that the music gives you. I know that sounds kind of floofy and kind of whatever, wishy-washy, but it's very, very true in our case, especially. My father and I, when we travel to conferences, it really is about that artistic quality and that feeling that it generates in us, and what we see in terms of engagement with the audience as well. Because in the end, when we bring groups here to London, we know that 90% of our lineup, people in London don't know. Like they don't know them, even if they're huge stars from whatever country they're coming from, or perhaps huge stars across Canada, but not necessarily well known in London. I find that London can be kind of a bit of a, like a little bit of like a niche market not a lot comes in and out type thing sometimes, especially when it comes to the global music category. But I think in the end, we think what is going to translate to audiences in terms of artistic quality, in terms of discovering something new, not necessarily new as in contemporary, but could be new as in traditional, and it could be something that's not necessarily, you know, that's known in London. What can people that are in London, because we are a large immigrant community, but it doesn't necessarily reflect sometimes in what the programming of the arts landscape that's here in London. And so therefore, how can we connect those communities that are here to their own communities as well, and perhaps discover something new? You know, I remember one time, actually quite a long time ago, we did a Latin festival. It was called Fiesta del Sol, which is literally Sunfest translated into Spanish. And so we did that Labor Day weekend for 2 years in a row. And, you know, it was presenting Latin music from a broad spectrum of Latin America, not just your typical salsa, merengue, bachata, or something like that. All types of genres, you know, joropo or llanero, or, you know, it's so many different kinds. And we had actual Latinos come to us and say, when's the Latin music starting? You know, so it's still, yeah, it's still a discoverability factor within its own communities as well. And so those are things that we prioritize. There are so many talented musicians and groups out there, but we want to make it a platform where people discover something new and perhaps educate themselves and go on and further on discover their own and go through their own musical journey. For that's the important thing for us.
Because it seems like that's one of the things that's different to me as like somebody attending like folk or world music festivals, is that like, as opposed to when you go to like a big rock, you know, you're going to see like those bands that you know, or as at world or folk, like you're like, oh, like this looks interesting, maybe this. And often at the end of the day you leave and you're like, oh my God, like this one, you know. Also because like, I don't know, I guess as a person that performs in like world music groups, I often just feel like the musicianship is so incredibly high in world music as opposed to like rock and like and more mainstream music, that I feel like it is like you're often just like shocked by what you get by these like relatively unknown new groups.
Yeah, because also too, they're rhythms that you don't listen to every day, right? So it seems like a novelty, even though it's been well established for so long within its own community. But it's just there's so many platforms available for commercial music and commercial musicians that it's hard to find sometimes other music, and you think, oh my God, this is brand new and different, when really it's like, no, that's existed in Peru for like 200 years or something, you know what I mean? So it's in that sense. But I do think you're right. I do think there's a dynamic aspect and a versatility to the global musician or global music artist, and that's something that's worth discovering.
Yeah, and it's something you really see like in the workshops and that kind of thing, which is something that you don't see so much at other kinds of festivals, is that like this sort of miracle when everybody can play together.
Yeah,
very like very unique to
and
those
that's the interesting thing too, is that, you know, you gather musicians together in, let's say, the green room or a jam space of some kind, and there doesn't matter what corner of the world they're coming from, there's gonna be a mutual feeling, a mutual beat that we can match up to. And that's the beauty of music, is really bridging these different cultures together. And so that's what we love to see. That's what we love to see, that people go and then they actually enjoy it, and they think to themselves, oh my gosh, this is something I never heard of before, but I'm feeling it and I'm dancing and like I don't care. And so we love to create that safe environment where people can get up off of their chairs and dance, or go and discover new foods, or go up and talk to the musicians themselves. Our stages are incredibly accessible for a purpose and for a reason. And actually, every single artist that we do book for the festival, they have to play twice, at least twice at the festival, specifically so that, because we have multiple stages going on, that people can, let's say, go check out one band, and if they miss another band that's happening on another stage, they can catch them at a different time. And that's important for us, so that you can ingest as much music as possible.
Can you think of like a particular time when you saw a new band for the first time at like a conference or something like that that really stood out to you, and sort of why they did?
Yeah, it's funny because we talked about this before, and I was trying to think about specific ones, and let me think back to, let's say, the WOMEX, World Music Expo, that we go to every single year. So the last edition that we went to, that was in Tampere in Finland, there was a band from Senegal, I believe. Their name's Centrofi. And it was this massive band that fused, you know, traditional rhythms, but also funk and soul and hip hop. And, you know, you never know. With a large band, you think you're gonna automatically get energy, you know, but that's not
Mhm.
necessarily the case. It doesn't always work.
Mhm.
But this band in particular, like they had this audience engagement that we were just all in the mosh pit and just having fun and sweating and just having the best time of our lives. And so it's not necessarily that the band has to have high energy or like, you know, like the music itself has to be party music or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's about their engagement with the audience, but at the same time having that that tightness of a group. They've been together, you know, that's their passion. That group is what they're selling right now. That's what they're touring with. They're super super tight, and so their musical quality is just through the roof. So those are things that are really really important because a lot of the times, and I understand 100% with musicians, you have to be part of different bands because that's the way you survive as a musician. But if you're going to be showcasing a group, make sure that that group is super tight and like you guys know the music in and out. Doesn't matter, you don't have to be necessarily reading off of music or anything like that, and then your engagement with the audience is so important because
Mhm.
that's what sells it in the end. Doesn't matter if I think this group is amazing and super talented. If they have no engagement with the audience, that's not necessarily going to be good for my festival and the audiences that come to expect something really really exciting. And I'm just gonna let you know, I have a feeling my dog's gonna bark soon just because there's
Oh, that's
outside.
totally
So
fine.
just FYI.
We're in strange times.
Yeah.
That's so interesting and so kind of like useful to know for people because it is true that yeah, it's kind of like becomes sort of a privilege to just be able to be in one band,
Of
you know?
course. Absolutely.
Yeah, and have that like yeah, but of course it's like what comes from like touring 40 shows a year that you get that kind of tightness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's definitely that music quality. That's first and foremost our priority. Second is
Mhm.
audience engagement. And then third is really their willingness and professionalism to tour. So
Mhm.
are they export ready? Are they ready to go? Do they have all their ducks in a row? Do they have a team behind them? Even if they're self-managed, like is there a specific team that's going to go and really do that work behind the scenes? Because in the end, you can pitch to us, we can love you, and then we can try to organize some kind of partnerships with other presenters in the region.
Mhm.
But in the end, it's up to that artist or that team from that artist to really push it forward as well. So it has to be a double attack. It has to be on both ends, really,
You
in
kind of
order.
have to have the whole package.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a really well produced live video. That
Yeah.
I can't stress enough how important that is because in the end you can have a produced video, you know, that's a really great music video, let's say, that I can use for marketing later. That's a great thing too. But I need
Mhm.
to know if I haven't seen you live and you're pitching my band, I need to understand what your live experience is like. Even though it's through a screen, I understand that it's not quite the same, but I need to understand how you interact with that audience. So that I can't stress enough how important it is. The sound, especially the it could be shot on the latest camera or iPhone or whatever, but if the sound is terrible, oh my gosh, please no. Make sure the sound is right. It's so easy to plug in to the soundboard and just record that and put it onto your video. So that's something that's like the biggest tip that I can give musicians is give me a really well produced live video. It doesn't have to be a film, but it needs
Mhm.
to at least relay to me what your live experience is like. Another thing too is that, you know, if you're pitching me a band that's 8 people, but then only 4 people can tour, that's totally different. Right. And so that's really important as well, is that what you're pitching to me needs to be what I'm going to be buying later and presenting to our audiences. So a lot of the times that happens saying, oh, well, I can do this arrangement or I can do this arrangement or I can do this one. But then my first question will be like, but what's touring? I need to understand what's touring. So
Mhm.
because that's what's going to be on my stage and I need to understand what that is.
Yeah, it sounds like you just really need to know, like, you need a good representation of what will be the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you tell me a bit about this big news that we heard about last week about your new position at Small
Oh,
World Music and sort of how that came about?
Sure, yeah. So I guess, just like musicians working in the arts, we all take different contract positions. And so I not only did Sunfest, I also did logistics for a lot of different festivals. I worked with theater companies. I worked closely with our partner organization in Kitchener called Neruda Arts, doing not only helping with programming, but also their site. And I also did a rebrand for them too, way back. And so there's a lot of different organizations that I've worked with and that I collaborate with. So just through the industry, getting to know colleagues and friends, I got a
Mhm.
contract to be a jury member for Global Toronto, which is a music conference put on by Small World Music Center. And so I got a contract to do the jury there. And then, which Small World has just joined, I just saw. and and so I did their jury, and then they asked me to come on to be their rapporteur for the Global Toronto Conference. So with that, I ended up attending the entire conference and reporting back and doing a speech at the end and talking about it. And then, of course, throughout the year, I'm still working with them, working on booking opportunities, partnership opportunities. And so through that, Umer, the executive director, offered me a position. So I thought that was really exciting, especially because, I think it creates a really great bridge between our cities, and I think it creates a really great bridge within the industry itself. And for me, it opens up this whole new world, personally and professionally, of this, I guess you could say, non-live music performance aspect, because it's also about working with Emergence, which is their great mentorship program for musicians that are immigrants or refugees here in Canada. And I believe in that incredibly, and I'm so excited for that. And then working on their Global Toronto Conference, which is more like the B2B, like the business industry aspect of it. So whereas with Sunfest, it's, I wear many different hats with Sunfest. Obviously, the artistic programming is one of them, but also production of the actual site, sponsorships, grant writing, marketing, social media, like lots of different things as well. And then we are going to go more into that industry side of it, more that conference side of it as well. But I don't necessarily have that full on experience of that. So this is a whole new project and a whole new beast for me that I'm very excited to tackle. So yeah, this is really exciting. It's brand new. You guys are the first ones to ask me about it.
It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited.
Are you going to be, so you're going to be focusing mainly on the conference and emergence, or are there other programs? Like what exactly is your role there?
Yeah, so my official title is head of programs, but it's funny, we were talking about that and saying, what does that mean? And then in the end, what that means is that yes, I will be the lead on a couple of things, which is Global Toronto, Emergence, but we work incredibly collaboratively at Small World, and that's what I love so much about it, is that, and that's why I think I jumped on the opportunity to work with this incredible team, like Umer, John, Alan, Ala, like they're all so great.
Yeah.
They all work together so well and all contribute to the ideas of every single program. So that includes programming for, their Asian Music Festival, their Small World Festival, collaborating with performances at the Small World Center, because there's also a center there on Shaw Street at Artscape. And, just all around their year-round programming and partnerships and things like that. So I think that's really exciting to be able to contribute to so many different aspects of not only the organization, but the industry itself, and supporting grassroots to big names for, different types of things, especially right now through the pandemic. Small World Center has become largely a very recording studio. That's essentially what it's become. So that's really exciting to jump on that as well, and continue to open up partnerships and networking opportunity within the Toronto music scene. I'm a London native, so therefore, going into Toronto, that's a big leap as well. As much as I do know a lot of industry players there, it's going to be great to actually work more closely with them. So yeah, so it's all around lots of projects, lots of work going on.
I
The
know.
Small World team hustles, so I'm
Small World, yeah,
excited
the
to
Small
talk
World
about.
seems to have like it does so many different things. Like it's like it has that space presenting live music, and it's like the conference, the festival, like all
Yeah,
these different programs. They really are this like center that has their hands in so many different pots.
I
We
like
actually
that. Yeah,
collaborated with
love that
them.
them. It's just I think it avoids you getting bored. There's always something cool and new, different going on. So, I'm a Sagittarius. I like different things. So it's perfect.
Need some variety. Yeah, so like FabCollab actually had speaking about the Small World space, had the Women in Song Festival and partnered with Small World to present that, which is a nice segue into talking about sort of the pandemic, because we've sort of grown out of the pandemic as a way to sort of connect artists and audiences in these new times. And that festival grew out of that, right? Was creating an opportunity for women to perform when we couldn't be in the same room as an audience. And Small World was a huge part of making that happen. So what has it been like for you as a festival producer, programmer, a live music, and an event coordinator, all of these hats that have to do with having a live audience? What has it been like for you this year? How are you doing?
2020 was, oh, hi Tina. I just saw my friend Tina's on there. It, just like everybody else, like what can you say? Like it sucked. It was terrible. It was horrible to have to cancel events. It was horrible to have to cancel the festival in Sunfest. That was just heartbreaking because first time in 26 years that we didn't do it, and it wasn't our fault. It was just a circumstantial thing. But, negative aspects aside, I think what's really positive, because I think we need to focus on what came out of it and what's really positive. So one thing that's positive, you guys created, I'm sorry, I keep saying you guys, you ladies created FabCollab. Like that's amazing, and that's a really positive thing that came out of it. So I think we really need to focus on what are the opportunities that were created. Yeah, it was terrible what happened and everyone's sad about it, and I cannot wait until I can go to a live show because
Oh my God.
it hurts not to go,
Really
and because it's such a part of my own identity and obviously profession. But I think positives that came out of it, especially at the beginning, a lot of associations, a lot of industry professionals were coming together, sharing knowledge, being that shoulder to cry on for each other, or just being empathetic towards each other, really starting to collaborate. And collaborations were always a thing, but I feel like it just went, there was a fire lit under everybody that we're like, okay, we need to collaborate, because one thing, resources are depleting. We need to understand we can't do nothing, we have to do something. And so for Sunfest, that was a huge thing too, is that we're like, we can't just sit and do nothing. We serve our community in a specific way, and we have to continue doing that, even if it's virtually, which is what we ended up doing. We ended up doing a virtual festival, and we're doing connected sessions online. Once a month, we present some groups online. But it's not only serving audiences, but it's supporting artists. So I think that collaboration that's the number one thing that I saw come out of this pandemic that I'm super grateful for, that I really hope that we continue to see the benefit of that, and how when live music events do come back, that we're going to continue to do that and support each other and not be so competitive with each other, because in the end our audiences are different, and we need to recognize that. It could be whether it be a different region, or perhaps we're a venue and a specific audience comes to our venue. I think in the end we just have to continue to support each other and collaborate with each other and be empathetic as well. One thing that I've noticed too, and this is not alone to the music industry, is that sometimes we just need that little extra time right now with everything that's going on, not just the pandemic, but especially the pandemic, but all the social movements, everything that's happening. We're just being bombarded constantly on media, social media, with this, it feels like just negative news. And so we need to be more empathetic with each other in terms of, really, sometimes I need an extra day to respond to that email. You know what I mean? And so like, I just need a little bit of an extra time to do that. But I think what's really exciting that's coming out of this, like I said, the collaboration aspect, I'm really excited to hear all of the brand new music that's going to come out from the artists, because I know this is a very creative period as well. And then at the same time, some people took that time to rest, and that's super important as well, is to take that time, because I think, especially in North America, we glorify this hustle of constantly being busy. How are you? I'm super busy, and just glorify that so much. So I think just taking that time for ourselves, going back to our families or going back to our friends or just to ourselves, and just understanding what it is that we want. What is it that we're missing right now? So, for me, number one, live music. I miss that so hard. So I know that for me going forward, that's what I'm championing going forward. I'm championing the artist, I'm championing the live music experience, and anything that goes around in that ecosystem of being able to perform or being able to present live music. I want to support that. So I know that because that's what I miss right now. And so I
Yeah.
hope that everyone sees it that way as well.
Yeah, I think it's like probably given, I mean, for me at least, yeah, some clarity about what is really important.
Hmm.
And also like more empathy that we're like all human, you know, like because in professional capacities, we're all sort of like this, like deadlines, da 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 da. Da. And during this time, it's like I think people have more empathy
Yeah.
for like whatever's going on with who, you know, to let people sort of like take a minute and breathe and like accept that people are going through stuff right now, and it's kind of nice. And yeah, this idea of collaboration has been incredible, and that's like a big part of what obviously what we're about, and
Mhm.
it's amazing to see people realize that we're all in this together, like within
Exactly.
an industry. Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
both organizations, the Sunfest and Small World, I think that's what I love about them so much is that we value that humanization aspect of the industry and just that collaborative factor that in the end, you know, we're not silos. We shouldn't be siloed from each other. And especially in this industry where, you know, at the heart of it is the artist, we need to support the artist and continue to do that. That's our number one priority, right?
Mhm.
And then through that comes, you know, the bridging of cultures and different communities and education of others as well. That's so important. So I think continuing with that mindset is hopefully how we can continue on and build a better industry, right? A lot of those conversations that came out of the Global Toronto Conference were exactly that, were the social issues around the industry itself and what we
Mhm.
want to see change, right? And so I hope that people continue with those kinds of conversations and make those changes. And we are starting to see them slowly but surely,
Yeah.
you know, with it, when it comes to a lot of industries coming out and reaching out to organizations such as Sunfest or Small World and saying, we need to program way more diverse artists. Can you help us? You know,
That's great.
you
That's
know,
really
and
good
you
to
know, and
hear.
some people might say, well, now you wanna jump on like our thing. No, no, no. That's a good thing. Creating more opportunities for diversity
Yeah,
is a beautiful thing and it's a huge opportunity, and that is great about our industry, and there's room for all of us. I think that's something that we
there's
all have.
really room because there's like no shortage of amazing, you know, world artists looking to be,
Absolutely.
you know,
In fact,
successful.
it's hard for somebody like me because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's the paradox of choice, right? Of just having too many
Mhm.
options out there and just like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And that's like actually something that's really interesting is that, you know, for example, I was watching and like even as part of our program with Sunfest, but I was watching Global Fest yesterday and I was talking with a friend and saying how you know, it's so great that we're discovering all these bands that perhaps didn't have the opportunity to travel right now or previously, perhaps
Yeah.
with visa issues coming from their country or they just couldn't get on board with that. But because of this virtual experience, we're allowed to then we can then discover this band from different parts of the world that may not have necessarily been able to travel here, right? Because that is a huge impediment, unfortunately, is our border restrictions
Yeah.
in order to bring bands. There's been so many bands that we wanted to bring before, but because of visas being denied, or perhaps just whatever's going on in terms of the foreign policy between each country, that they just can't come. And so
Yeah.
therefore, it's really, really important that we reach out to these bands now when we have the opportunity to do so. And obviously moving forward, we can as well,
Mhm.
and present that virtual experience with them and say, hey, there are different ways in which you can discover these artists. And then another thing that came out is that, you know, when you think about festivals, you know, perhaps you and I are just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like going to different festivals and being amongst the crowds and dancing and all that. But that's not the reality for everybody. People have
Mhm.
accessibility issues. And so this digital aspect and component has been such an opener for that in terms of audiences with those accessibility issues. So we can't forget about that as well. So we can't just stop virtual once live starts again. There has to be a hybrid and there has to be a way in which we bridge the two in order to serve as many audiences as possible.
Yeah, have you had feedback like that from different communities that are just really grateful who couldn't, you know?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. And we've definitely had that kind of feedback. I mean, we had that feedback before at the festival
Mhm.
where it was like, it's too packed. I can't go in there with my wheelchair, or I can't do large crowds. Unfortunately, it's just not something that I can do. Or
Yeah.
perhaps because of their age, there's maybe nowhere to sit, that kind of thing. And so there's different issues and reasons as to why people may not come out. And so therefore that's denying them the opportunity to enjoy the music. So that's actually why we did last year in 2019, the last live edition of the festival. We did start live streaming our evening performances specifically for that reason. And so it's funny that now, like, we had experience in that, so we continue to do it. And so we did have audiences tuning in. And also what's great too is this great marketing opportunity to open up new audiences around the world. So it's not just restricted to those who can make it physically to London, but who can like tune in from everywhere at all times. And you leave the recording up, they can watch it at their leisure or during their time zone. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity that came there as well.
So what are you thinking looking forward? Like, what are presenters thinking in terms of COVID and coming back to live music? Like, I know I'm like, this summer, let there be something, but are you able, like, what are presenters thinking? Are you able to plan in advance for things like this summer or this fall or this winter? Like, what are presenters thinking right now?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer, answer for that. I really don't. I think we're all cautiously planning for the summer. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of importance and priority for the fall in terms of live music coming back in the fall. For outdoor festivals in the summer especially, I think, you know, if I can speak for Sunfest, what we're thinking right now is obviously we're going to do the festival 100% in some way, shape, or form, whether that be worst case scenario, totally virtual, best case scenario in person. But even that best case scenario in person, I think will have to be modified. It won't be Sunfest in 2019. It'll have to be Sunfest in 2021 hybrid mode, right? So I think we're cautiously planning for that. Obviously, our biggest concern right now are the borders. So we really do bank on booking half of our acts international and half of our acts national. Obviously, I think just given everything that happened, every kind of restriction you can imagine, I think those lineups are going to be maybe a little bit smaller, but still just as artistically great and powerful as well, and perhaps a little bit more national and regional. So I think that's the reality for us. And then when it comes to other venues and whatnot, I think they're planning more so for the fall, especially with closed indoor venues. I think that's where fear is, right? Because even if you have a 2,000 seater place, you can only have 50 or 100 people in there, right? It doesn't matter how big it is. It could be 300 person place, but you can have 50. So it's not like 50% capacity. It's not a percentage capacity. It's a number. And that's really, really difficult because at that point it's, you know, is it even worth it to present something? Because we're going to completely lose so much money just on operating the venue itself. So those are realities that need to happen. And another thing too is that people ask us, why didn't you just do something outdoors? And, you know, because everyone can social distance there. Well, the issue is you need a special permit to do that. You need a special permit to do things outdoors. And, you know, in the case for London right now, as I'm sure is the reality for cities across Ontario, is that municipalities are just simply not giving those out. So we can't do that. We'd have to do it at a private venue or location, and that's a lot harder to acquire, especially in this day and age where our resources are getting smaller and smaller. So it's very there's a lot of components that go into the presentation of live music, and you know, I think a lot of people don't realize all the little components that go into it. I mean, when you put on an event outdoors, you have to think about washrooms, you know, and that's the last thing you want to think about when you come to like presenting music or something like that. But really it's important. You have to do that. You have to provide that. And so
logistics of when you're outdoors,
there's so many logistics involved, and you know, and it's not that we don't want to face them. We're willing to work hard and do it, but just sometimes there are barriers that you cannot surpass when it comes to situations such as this. But again, we're hopeful, we're cautiously planning, and we have gotten so much support from our partners, sponsors, etc. And so we're so thankful for that. And we're going to continue programming, whether it's virtual, whether it's live, whether it's a hybrid of that. We're going to continue doing it because that's what we're here for. We're here to support the artists. We're here to serve our audiences. We're here to constantly champion diversity, cultural diversity through music. So that's never going to stop. And we're always going to be doing that.
Yeah, it seems like people like yourself and just like all different kinds of artists and presenters have found new ways to sort of like charge on and keep things going
Absolutely.
through the
We're in
pandemic. And now
a
it's,
creative industry, right? So we're gonna
yeah.
appreciate
And it
that.
seems like now we're sort of seeing like the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, and can start thinking about maybe seeing some shows again and that kind of thing. So it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably like I think we've like talked about so many amazing things, and I feel like you've shared so many things that will be really helpful to different artists that are
I
sort of thinking
would like to ask
about
a
what they're
question.
doing. Yeah, go
So
for
like,
it.
how do you feel as an artist right now? What's the future for artists right now?
I mean, so it's been really difficult because I'm in Toronto and I'm a dancer, and so I'm supposed to be creating a new show, and I have some grant money and stuff for that, but it's been really hard because I can go into the studio for like a month and then it shuts down and I can't go into the studio. And so there's been like a lot of that sort of like push and pull.
Hmm.
But then there's also been these new opportunities to create digital work. There's been like new funding for that kind of stuff that never was there before.
Sure.
So I'm definitely like not like working as much as I was before, and I've had to like pivot and focus on other things, which is like, for example, this
Hmm.
is because I also work as a journalist. So I feel like a lot of artists are like, what are the other things I do, and how can I like use this sort of time and use this sort of new connectivity to sort of continue doing my artwork. But definitely it's like I really want to be back in front of an audience.
Of
And so
course.
I was very eager to ask you that particular question. I was like, so when?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is that, I'm very envious of my colleagues in Toronto at Small World, right? Because they can go into the center when the recordings are happening, if there's room available, of course, and see that, and just even that would be amazing to me, you
Yeah,
know?
well, like doing when we put together the Women in Song Festival, that was like so exciting and thrilling.
I'm
Just
sure.
because I hadn't like been in the room with a bunch of musicians
Hmm.
in like 6 months, and also the fact that right now there's no touring, because that
Yeah.
I think is a big part of so many artists' lives, like the travel and just like meeting a whole new set of people every day
Hmm.
and collaborating with different musicians at a different festival every day is like just like some of the richest experiences you can have as an artist. And
Yeah.
it's like tricky, obviously, to do that now. So
Obviously, as a
I
presenter,
am looking forward
that's
to that. Like I feel
that's
like we're all doing our best, but we need to be at some point in the room with the audience.
I know. As a presenter, it's really hard to just, it's not hard. It's still rewarding to listen to performances online. I mean, especially discovering new artists. It's so exciting. You get your speakers going and you dance by yourself and it's great. But nothing will ever beat that live music experience, of course. So as a presenter, yeah, I miss going to those conferences, seeing friends, making new friends, but also just being on stage and seeing those showcases because it's just that's the best part of the job, to be honest with you. That's the best part.
Well, we're looking forward to having you here in Toronto at Small World. That's super exciting, and all of the wonderful stuff that you'll be bringing to us. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. It was so informative and so wonderful to hear about all of the work that you've been doing and that you're going to be
Likewise.
doing moving
Like
forward. And I'm just going to say a couple more things for because we have next week, tomorrow, Alana, the co-host of the series Curtain Call, which you've been watching, is presented by FabCollab. And we're going to next week have Shakura Saida. She's an award-winning Toronto, I don't know if you know her, Mercedes. She's an award-winning Toronto-based blues singer that Tamara's going to have here. So she'll be talking with her about her work and also having her perform a little bit. So if you have any feedback about this program or anything else, we'd love to hear from you. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at FabCollab Live. And yeah, thanks to everyone who joined us, and thanks so much, Mercedes. And
thank, thank you,
have a
Leah.
wonderful
And
2021. I hope to
yeah,
see you at a venue.
100% at the front of the stage.
Exactly. Thanks
Take
so
care.
much. Bye.
Bye.